What if the proof of a divine presence, what if it isn't found in some ancient book or on a faraway mountaintop? What if it's in something you're doing right now, at this very second, without even thinking about it? Let's dive into this idea that maybe, just maybe, God dwells within every single one of us in the simple act of breathing.
Just let that sink in for a second. That is a powerful statement. It suggests that our very first act in this world is something sacred. And the key to unlocking this whole idea, well, it lies in an ancient name for God and that simple, constant act of breathing.
So the ancient Hebrew name for God, YHWH, was seen as so holy, so sacred, it was basically unutterable. But some scholars, like Richard Rohr, they suggest that's because it wasn't a word you were meant to speak, but a sound you were meant to feel. It's an imitation of breath itself. An inhale, Yah, and then an exhale, Ah, where. It's literally the sound of life.
And this just illustrates the point so beautifully, doesn't it? Your first cry when you were born was an inhale and an exhale. Your very last breath on your deathbed, it's going to be the same. And every single moment in between, you are speaking this name. There isn't a Catholic way to breathe or a Buddhist way to breathe. It's just this universal life-giving thing we all share.
So that brings up a really fascinating question. And what you find when you start digging is that this idea of sacred breath, it isn't unique to one tradition at all. It's like this golden thread that's woven through so many of the world's ancient spiritual cultures.
For thousands of years, different people, separated by vast oceans and entire continents, all came to the same, pretty stunning conclusion, that our breath is the bridge between the physical world and the spiritual one.
Let's start in ancient Egypt. They called it the Ka. Now, this wasn't just air, it was your life force, kind of like a spiritual twin that had to be preserved after death so it could navigate the afterlife. That's why mummification was so important. It wasn't just about the body, it was about making sure the Ka, that sacred breath, could continue its journey.
Then you have the Greeks, who had a very direct way of using this idea. I'm sure you've heard of the Oracle of Delphi. Well, the priestess there would inhale these sacred fumes called pneuma, a word that means breath or spirit, and that would open a channel for her to receive messages straight from the gods. So while the Egyptians saw breath as the soul's ride after life, the Greeks were using it as a direct line to the divine during life.
And over in India, the concept gets even bigger. Prana isn't just your personal life force, it's considered the breath of the entire universe. It's what animates everything. And through the practice of pranayama, which is basically conscious breath control, a person can actually harmonize their own energy with the rhythm of the cosmos itself. Pretty amazing. It's a similar story in China, where we find qi. Just like prana, it's this universal life force, but there's a huge emphasis on cultivating it for balance, for health, and for harmony right here in the physical world. Practices you might have heard of, like qigong and tai chi, are essentially just forms of mindful breathing designed to manage this vital energy.
So, from Egypt to Greece to India to China, the message is surprisingly consistent. These ancient cultures saw breath as way more than just a biological function. For them, it was a direct bridge to the sacred. And when you start to see it that way, well, it changes your relationship with the divine. Because if this connection is as constant and as close as our own breathing, then it means the divine isn't some distant being we have to shout at to get its attention. It suggests something much, much closer, something that's already here.
And this really changes how we look at faith, doesn't it? Is it just a list of rules, a series of hoops you have to jump through to prove you're worthy? Or is it an experience? Something you can know is true for yourself, as simply and as constantly as the breath that's filling your lungs right now.
And, this isn't some new or radical idea. It actually echoes through the Bible itself. This verse from Jeremiah paints a picture of a God who isn't far away at all, but one who is woven into the very fabric of everything.
And we see it again here in Acts. This suggests that we don't just exist in the world, we exist within the very life of God. Every move we make, every thought we have, every single breath, it's all happening inside this divine presence.
When you grasp this, it completely transforms what spiritual practice is. Prayer stops being about sending words out into a silent, empty void, hoping for an answer. Instead, it becomes a dialogue, a communion with a presence that is already here, both inside you and all around you.
So how do we actually experience this for ourselves? Well, the answer isn't in thinking harder or trying harder. It's found in doing less. It's not in the noise, but in the silence.
The whole practice of contemplation is really about letting go. We all have that non-stop inner voice, right? The one that's always judging, worrying, planning. The goal is to just get out of the way, to stop feeding those thoughts, to stop identifying with them, and to just allow a deeper awareness to bubble up to the surface.
And the practice itself is beautifully simple. First, you just find a quiet spot and you're still. You just let your body and your mind settle down. Second, as thoughts pop up, and they definitely will, you don't fight them. You just notice them and then gently let them go, kind of like watching clouds drift by in the sky. And finally, you start to listen, not for a sound outside, but for the deep, profound silence that's always there, right underneath the chatter of your mind.
As the source material puts it, it's only when you are finally out of the way with all your agendas and your judgments and your preconceived notions that something else has a chance to get through. It's a deep question to sit with. In that total stillness, what might you hear?
Maybe in that silence, we don't find easy answers, but we find a presence, a kind of knowing that's deeper than words, an experience that's as fundamental, as life-giving, and as constant as the simple, sacred act of breathing.